Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for a preview of the 2025 US Open men's final between Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. The matchup we all expected. It will be an eighth straight slam, split between Sinner and Alcaraz. It will be a 15th meeting between the two, and it will take place at a venue that I believe holds special meaning for their rivalry because it was back in 2022 in the quarterfinal stage where these two played their first bona fide epic. A match that went 5 sets. Alcaraz saved a set point. He won that quarterfinal. He would end up winning his first career major a couple of matches later over Casper Ruud, 2022 US Open. What a match that was, man. And lucky us, there's been a lot more where that came from. I want to take a quick moment before we get into the analysis to acknowledge Felix Auger-Aliassime and the tremendous run that he's had. What a credible semifinals run, from beating Zverev, beating Rublev, a tight quarterfinal, understandably, but he got it done against de Minaur and played an awesome semifinal against Sinner. It was a great show. It was a very high-level match. The way Felix was holding up on the backhand side, how deadly and efficient his forehand was, the way he moved inside the court to take time away, how willing he was to come forward and finish up at the net. The speed is always there for Felix, but the commitment to defense, how balanced he was when he got into the corners, that enabled him to hang in some rallies, even turn some rallies around against Jannik Sinner. The first serve is always good for Felix. I'm never concerned with that. I think he's made improvements on the second. I liked how he competed emotionally. I just can't say enough. I can't say enough about Felix and how well he played. And it took a really great performance also from Sinner in the semifinal, other than the serving, which was off at times, to get through Felix in that semifinal. So I just wanted to say that. So let's begin. It's been the summer of Sincaraz, and this will just be the exclamation point or the final chapter in this this 3-part series. It is exceedingly rare, by the way. I mean, look, it's so impressive how well these two guys have done this year. Not that it's fully surprising. I think that there were a lot of signs that were pointing this direction for a long time in terms of the level of tennis they were playing and how they were both constructed as tennis players. But we have to take a moment just to appreciate the fact that they are just holding down the fort here in this clear tier 1 that is separate from everybody else. And it's not ever an apples to apples comparison, but this never happened in the Big 3 era. Federer and Nadal never played 3 straight major finals, and Nadal and Djokovic never played 3 straight major finals. I don't know when the last time it's happened, and because I am recording this late Saturday night, I haven't really had time to filter through all of the numbers and the stats that I'll probably be armed with come Sunday, but needless to say, it's incredible. That said, as far as analysis is concerned, we have covered a lot over the course of the last few months in the Roland Garros final, and then the aftermath of talking about that, then the Wimbledon lead up, and then the final, and then the aftermath of all that. There is also obviously Cincinnati, which just didn't provide us with any real takeaways given how things played out. That doesn't mean it's not a real title for Carlos Alcaraz. Of course it is. That's just how tennis works sometimes. Sometimes health dictates results. But as analysts, given how that played out, we don't discern much from that. As players, same thing. In the psychology of the head-to-head, that result doesn't count the same. I'm sure Carlos is very happy to have the title, the points, the money, the statistic, the record, all of that. But if you hooked him up to a lie detector test and said, did you beat Jannik Sinner? He'd say, well, technically, but also, not exactly. If you hooked Jannik Sinner up to a lie detector test and say, did you lose to Carlos Alcaraz? He'd say, well, technically, yeah, but I was sick. So that's Cincinnati. I want to start with some of the key battles that take place when these two share the court, and then I'll do a little bit of kind of Sinner conclusion, Alcaraz conclusion, and then prediction. Keep it pretty simple here. Some of the key battles that I'll be looking out for, some things that I think can determine the match. The running forehands. I think it's been kind of apparent in this head-to-head that both guys just love those violent, sideline-breaking cross-court forehands. Alcaraz used it so well in Paris. I think Sinner feels like he can use it to set up points against Alcaraz, and sort of by going at Carlos's biggest weapon off the ground aggressively, it's where he can draw errors. It's where he can open up the court and kind of keep Alcaraz at bay. And I'm curious to see ultimately who is going to defend their forehand corner better, because both players are so good. And by the way, Sinner does it particularly well with the backhand down the line as well. Both players are so good at going hard into the opponent's forehand corner. The other key battle I'm looking forward to playing out is Alcaraz's backhand variety versus Sinner's counter tactics. As Carlos normally does not fare all that well slugging backhand to backhand without mixing up heights and spins and trajectories and all that. But there are certain things that Sinner has tried to do to counter some of that variety. So one of these things is not something that I've seen prominently in the Sinner-Alcaraz head-to-head, but I saw it very vividly when Sinner played Musetti. Whenever Musetti went to slice a backhand, Jannik was hyper-aggressive at moving left to create a forehand, because Sinner feels like he can create from that low contact point off the slice with his forehand, and obviously the ball floating in the air longer off of a slice gives Sinner the extra time to get his feet in that position. I felt like Alcaraz underused the slice at Wimbledon. It's not as effective on hard court as it is on grass, so I'm not sure how much Alcaraz will play it. Will he look to play it more often? Maybe not. And then will Sinner get those runarounds? And the reason why this is interesting is also because when you hit a backhand slice and you actually force Sinner to hit his two-hander off of it, I feel like it's been pretty effective. I thought Felix was kind of effective with it against Jannik. Dimitrov was effective against it, with it against Jannik at Wimbledon. And we'll leave it at that. Alcaraz can also apply extra height on his backhand, and the key is, at that point, Sinner is looking to counter by taking the ball on the rise instead of being pushed back by the heavy, loopier balls. Another key battle is, of course, the approach on the clutch points. So this one has been so important and fascinating. For Sinner, it's a simplified approach. Jannik does not complicate his game. He has his programmed patterns that he likes to play. Alcaraz likes to take initiative, and he often takes initiative in an unpredictable manner. That often means that on big points, Alcaraz ends up with a higher ceiling, but Sinner plays cleaner, is less likely to make a mistake. Now, I feel like that can shape-shift match to match to match. That is not always how it plays out, but it's definitely the general theme of how these two like to operate on big points. Sinner's going to be solid and predictable. Alcaraz is going to be occasionally unplayable and also occasionally wasteful. Finally, the serve. The serve dynamic has been interesting in this head-to-head. Jannik Sinner, after a string of subpar first serve percentage outputs against Alcaraz, finally unlocked a serve level that he could be happy with at Wimbledon. But it was actually the second serve where I think he most separated from Alcaraz. Jannik got bowled on the second serve in some big moments. That was key. Alcaraz, as we've seen a couple of times against the very elite returners, can get exposed when, especially off clay, when predictably hitting his kick second serve, particularly into the righty backhand. Sinner was able to take advantage of that. So was Djokovic at the Australian Open earlier this year. Carlos has to mix it up a little bit. I think he knows that, but he has to hit some more aggressive second serves into the body and into the forehand with some width. He can still hit the kick to the backhand. It just can't be predictable. And then for Alcaraz, it's now he who is due for a bounce back when it comes to first serve percentage after a 53% spot at Wimbledon, where I felt Carlos was overhitting the first serve. It's now time for Alcaraz to bump that number up, at least attempt to bump that number up in this U.S. Open final. All right, emphasis for Sinner. Obviously, the blueprint is there. And it would be inaccurate to say that they just created the blueprint at Wimbledon when Sinner finally won. I think that's inaccurate. I think the blueprint was created a little bit earlier on. I don't think it was there when Alcaraz beat Sinner at Roland Garros last year and Beijing last year. Rome this year I thought was kind of a special circumstance that I don't think the Sinner team was super clear-headed, but I do think it was actually taking shape at that point. He just didn't really have the goods to execute it. By the time they played at Roland Garros, it was pretty clear what Sinner felt like he needed to do. And then at Wimbledon, I think he executed it better and had better conditions to do it. What am I referring to? It's really an emphasis on making Alcaraz shock absorb. Just playing a typical suffocating brand of tennis, like Ben Shelton said that playing Jannik Sinner feels like you're playing on 2x speed. And Jannik, against many opponents, is willing to take a little bit of pace off of his rally balls at times just to stay solid. Against Alcaraz, he's really made an effort in the last couple matches to not do that, particularly forehand to forehand. You can't let Alcaraz breathe on the forehand or he's going to hurt you. And what Jannik has done really well in their last couple meetings is just to put Alcaraz under relentless and constant time pressure. Nobody does that better than Sinner. He combined it at Wimbledon with really good forward pressure, taking all the short balls, not only taking time away, but then applying forward pressure behind the power and finishing things off at the net. It's going to be really interesting to see if Sinner can replicate the net rush frequency that we saw at Wimbledon, because a lot of it is opening up opportunities to do that. And then you have a matter of execution, because, Alcaraz he's obviously a shot maker. He's terrific at getting the passing shots low. He's got elite speed to recover ground if you're going to volley into open court. So it's really difficult to execute that. And I think on hard court, it can be a little bit harder than on grass to finish up at the net, given how the ball reacts to the court surface, whether you talk about a stick volley or a drop volley or the effectiveness of an approach shot, the effectiveness of hitting behind an opponent. I do think it's a little bit harder to find those net finishes. But for Sinner, the blueprint is obviously there. It's rush, 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 rush. And what does that do? It takes away some of the forehand potency, but more importantly, it takes away the creation. For Carlos, I would also argue that the blueprint is there. He needs to try to force variety whenever possible to disrupt Sinner's contact points. But under pressure, he still has the ability, and a better ability than Sinner. Although Jannik was more courageous at Wimbledon, Alcaraz is still better at taking the opponent's racket away. And in big moments in the past in this head-to-head, that has mattered a lot. At the end of the day, Alcaraz is better at making difficult volleys. He is better at finishing with finesse. He is better at finishing with his forehand from what I'll call improbable positions. There's a little bit more special sauce at times in the Alcaraz forehand. And the other thing I think Carlos still feels he has is those 5-set legs. That 5-set track record, and if it's going to get really, really physical, I still think Alcaraz feels like he's got a strength advantage there. So, prediction. I said after Wimbledon that this rivalry is probably not what some people said it was at a certain point. At a certain point, there was a thought, and maybe there still is. It's not like this is settled. This is very much still up in the air and to be determined. But there was a thought that this is about Alcaraz having an advantage on natural surfaces and Sinner having an advantage on hard courts. And after Wimbledon, I said, what if it's not that? Sinner being 2-0 at Wimbledon, Alcaraz having a head-to-head advantage over Sinner on hard courts. What if it's not that? What if it's about court speed? What if it's about, are the conditions fast enough to facilitate Sinner's ability to suffocate Alcaraz with time and pace? Will this be a court speed rivalry? And right now I'm kind of leaning that way, and I think these US Open courts are fast enough for Sinner to do his thing. If the roof is closed, I think even better for Jannik. It might be on Sunday, but it may not be. It is a daytime match, warmer conditions, a little bit faster. Do think that helps Sinner. And I think that Sinner got over the clutch hump at Wimbledon, playing with more courage, going after serves, going after +1 balls and early ground strokes just to get on top of more points. Having the confidence to come forward and finish. And I think he's kind of done being a passenger on big points, which is the biggest thing that plagued him in this head-to-head. It's going to be interesting to see if Alcaraz can just force his variety that can bother Jannik Sinner, that can take him out of his ball striking zone and can manipulate Jannik's court positions and open up space on the court in ways that Jannik just doesn't really have the ability to counter back at Alcaraz. The question is, does Carlos have the time to do that? I think these courts are fast enough for Sinner to play a match somewhat similar to the one that we saw at Wimbledon. I'm not sure what Alcaraz can really do to counter. I'm going to go with Sinner in 4. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.